What if almost everything you've been told about marketing and advertising was false? Bob Hoffman's book, Marketers Are From Mars, Consumers Are From New Jersey, makes that exact case. He argues that marketers have been sold comforting myths dressed up as truths, that display ads are more measurable than they really are, that social media is more powerful than it actually is, and that brand love matters more than market share. This book is a direct, often ruthless collection of essays that cut through that illusion and pushes marketers back to reality, which again is a really good thing. And that's why I loved the book and why I'm doing the fourth book review on that. And a fun fact, fun aside, if you go to the last book review, Seth Godin, This is Strategy, I'm wearing the same shirt. So if you're watching this on YouTube, you can see me having a very limited closet as I'm wearing the same exact shirt. But anyways, let's get into it. So today I'm covering the book, Marketers Are From Mars, Consumers Are From New Jersey. This is by Bob Hoffman, and it is a collection of contrarian essays aimed at exposing the false certainties and bad assumptions baked into modern marketing. This episode covers 3 caveats about the book and about Bob, 5 insights, the main essays, and then the subsequent insights that I got from them, and then 3 questions that really make you take some action from this episode. So if you're ready to get into it, make sure to subscribe, as I will hopefully do more and more of these. This is the 4th book review. But before we get into it, run the intro. Welcome to On Marketing, a show to help you think more strategically about marketing and life. I won't tell you what to think, I'll help you improve how you think. This is episode 4 of our book series where I break down a marketing book. I'm Jordan Ogren, a marketing strategist with 9 years of experience and a podcast host for the last 4. This episode was originally recorded on April 6, 2026. I do apologize about the hot audio throughout the episode. I was really excited about this book review and I was probably a little bit too loud coming in, but I did fix some things on the back end, so in future episodes you hopefully won't have to deal with that. All views shared are the individual views of the host and guests, not those of their individual employers or associate organizations. This show is for informational purposes, not professional advice. Thank you for being here. Caveat number 1 is that Bob is Bob. Bob Hoffman is direct, sarcastic, provocative, and extremely contrarian, which is probably why I enjoyed his book. That's part of what it makes the book valuable, that he's able to say things that others just aren't willing to. But it also is sometimes jarring, and you have to take some of his jokes with a grain of salt. So again, I just wanted to emphasize that his humor, some of the things he's going to say could be jarring, but you just have to remember Bob's Bob. We're all different and unique, and I think there's too many people that'll tell you what you want to hear or what will help you kind of feel good. Bob doesn't do that. He tells you what you truly need to hear that will actually allow and lead to better activities and behaviors within marketing. Caveat number 2 is that this is a collection of essays and not a traditional book. One of the first things that I had coming into this was just the fact that it's like, okay, it's going to be a book. It's going to be tons of kind of continuity within the insights, but it's just a bunch of usually 1.5 page, 2-page essays where Bob just talks about something specific. And the challenge with this is that you're going to have to do your own work. Certain essays will stand out. You'll be able to take certain insights from the essays, as I do throughout this, but really the value is in building a lattice model of his ideas. So taking all these disparate different essays, disparate thoughts, insights, and really molding them into the way in which I do marketing today. So treat this book like a bunch of sharp essays and not a linear framework. But in my opinion, that's really better. And you can also then come back to the book, read an essay here, read an essay there, more digestible. And just in the end, it's better because he's not running through his 6 steps to better marketing. He's giving you a lot of takes on marketing that then you get to integrate into your own lattice model of thinking around marketing. And the final caveat 3, is that a lot of this will be hard to hear at first. Many of Hoffman's ideas run directly against what we as marketers have been taught to believe. He challenges standard assumptions around social media, loyalty, branding, measurement, and precision targeting. At first, some of it does feel too contrarian or too dismissive, but when you sit with the arguments as I did, most of them start to make uncomfortable sense. They start to resonate with what you've seen or what you felt doing the work. So if you haven't done the work yet and you're a young marketer, it might be a little different, might have to approach these ideas differently, but As someone who's been doing this for almost a decade, a ton of his insights, while hard to hear at first, really resonated in the end, because they not only just point to something wrong, but they also promote a change in mindset and behavior. So this book is useful because it forces you to question the things the industry treats as settled truth. And I think the best marketers, creatives, advertisers do that well, and then are able to just create better marketing, advertising, messaging, all of that. Now, let's get into the 5 essays and the 5 insights from this book. Insight number 1 is that great advertising is still mostly precision guessing. One of the essays that instantly stood out to me while reading this book was titled The Power of Precision Guessing. And Hoffman's core point is that nobody fully understands what makes advertising work. There's semi-contradictions that are just concrete within it. Consumers are irrational in some ways and then pragmatic in others. They'll buy from one brand constantly, but then they'll constantly switch up brands in another domain. So what makes advertising so difficult, what makes marketing so difficult, is this fact that there's these contradictions. What we know that both are true of that, and we just can't then neatly explain why that balance is there, aka the contradiction is there. But that's what makes advertising marketing so difficult, but also so interesting and exciting, because there is no algorithm. There's no magic formula that if you follow, you'll create great marketing, great advertising all the time. And the people who do consistently create good marketing, good advertising, often can't fully explain how they do it. And I think it's because they're using their brain. They have an instinct, a trained intuition for combining the emotional, the practical, entertaining, and persuasive. I always want to mess up that word. You'll notice why I could have messed it up as I talk about a future insight. But just mixing all of those things, being persuasive, being entertaining, practical, emotional, is just a gift that some people have developed, a strength, a muscle. In one of the quotes that really stood out to me from this essay was from Bob: the thing that drives ad people crazy and makes advertising such a fascinating endeavor is that there's no algorithm for great advertising. It's a gift that some creative people have for precision guessing. And he kind of talks just about this because he's writing this in the earlier days, quote unquote. So there's this huge ability to target people. And while Bob thinks that's like helpful, it isn't helpful of actually then knowing what to say and how to move them, which is why marketing is not math pretending to be creativity. It's creativity operating in uncertainty. And the tip or the takeaway from that is that you have to know how to think. You have to understand these frameworks and fundamental truths, first principles of marketing, to then be able to accurately create good things rather than just following a baking recipe. Insight number 2, essay number 2, is beware of marketers with ideologies. In the Beware of Marketers with Ideologies essay, Hoffman warns against becoming too attached to one big idea, which is fun because I have a few consultant or solopreneurs that promote that. You need to have one big idea. You need to have one big idea. And I get their point of you have to be able to distill what you do into something. But the challenge is as Bob uses Seth Godin as the example, he had this ideology about permission marketing. It was actually, I think, if I'm not mistaken, our first book review, Permission Marketing, written in 1999, 2000, that was supposed to predict that the permission model will overtake the interruption model. Well, we all know that the banner ads did not disappear as Seth Godin claimed to do. And actually, if anything, the interruption model has really taken a front seat compared to the permission model. So the bigger point is not that smart people can be wrong. It's that ideology makes it easier to misread reality. Seth Godin was promoting that ideology, which then made him miss reality, which is really interesting because if you recall from This Is Strategy, our most previous book review from Seth Godin, he talks about the best strategy is the one closest aligned to reality. So maybe 20 years after he wrote Permission Marketing, he's gotten closer and closer to that understanding that really it doesn't matter about having an ideology. It doesn't matter about having these frameworks. They're helpful, yes. But it's really constantly being aware of where reality's at, the culture, the markets, all of those things, and then aligning your strategy with that. Because the reality is that marketers, we love to fall in love with a good framework, a specific channel, or a philosophy, and then reinterpret the world to fit that ideology versus realizing and understanding the world and then altering our ideologies to fit that. Because in the end, the market doesn't care about your theory, and as Bob beautifully puts it, practicality beats ideology every single time. As he says, having operating principles is fine, but being ideologically, wow, that's a fun word, committed to a big idea often ends in a train wreck. Strategy should be rooted in reality, not in your favorite theory. I love that takeaway and something that I constantly apply in my own work. Insight number 3 is there's real danger in being the one who disagrees. In the essay, The Danger in Being Different, Hoffman argues that much of the industry is performing confidence more than operating from truth. People hide instinct behind their jargon and they disguise uncertainty with language like strategy, positioning, personality, and innovation, because in the end, we're all just faking it together. And when you do that, dissent actually becomes risky, because if you question the consensus, especially around something fashionable like social media, you get labeled backwards, cynic, a Luddite, out of touch. Or the worst of it, you get shown the door. But consensus does not make something true. Just because everybody believed the earth was the center of the universe did not actually mean that the sun wasn't the center of our universe. So I think one of the greatest quotes from this is that ignorance demands conformity, because everybody knows they're faking it. They seek comfort in the warmth of consensus. So we're all aware of it. And I think when we're all faking it in unison, there's danger in being different. But one of the points that I don't think Bob went deep enough on is that there's also huge advantages in actually the best marketing. The best ways to think about marketing begin when you're willing to say what the room doesn't want to hear. Sadly, throughout my career, that has mostly led to me being shown the door. But that's actually a good thing. A, you don't want to work for those companies that are just running a delusion. And then B, you actually start to strengthen your own thinking about the world, the realities of the world, versus just aligning with the sheep and saying, yeah, social media is the only way to grow your business. And then realizing that there's just so much within data that points to social media not being at all effective in helping with that. So while there's real danger in being the one who disagrees, being the red pillar, being the person to say, hey, I think that's not true, or I think I have a different perspective on it, is actually a huge strength and a superpower that you should harness, even though it's challenging and a bit scary when you first start doing it. Not everybody has built their brand around being a contrarian like I do, so I totally recognize that there's challenges for others that I don't have. Insight number 4 is that heavy usage does not equal loyalty. In the essay Sex in Commerce, what a title, Hoffman pushes back on one of marketing's favorite assumptions that heavy buyers are the most loyal buyers. They aren't necessarily. A buyer can buy frequently in a category and still split their purchases across multiple brands. Meanwhile, a light buyer may buy less often but choose the same brand every time. I may not go out to dinner to a fine dining establishment frequently, but every time I do, I pick them. While my usage is not high, I'm pretty damn loyal. So this distinction matters because marketers often confuse usage with devotion. Hoffman leans on Byron Sharp, his work in the book How Brands Grow, which I'm actually currently reading, which was awesome to have that tie-in. Bob actually kind of promoted me to read Brian Sharp's book on why brands grow. But he reinforces a deeper point that growth usually comes less from deepening attachment and more from expanding reach. So his argument, and I'm pulling from How Brands Grow book, is that it's very hard to get someone who's buying a car once every 3 years to buy one once every year. So it's really hard, and most times purchasing behavior is similar across all of the main brands. But the difference is how much market share, how many of other customers. So if I buy 4 times from McDonald's, however many times from others, McDonald's could say, we want to get them to buy more, and that's obviously true. But at the end of the day, it should get someone who's buying 5 times from McDonald's or Burger King and 1 time from McDonald's to go 5 times Burger King, 2 times McDonald's. So that's a really important success factor. And while it's normally for mainstream consumer brands, I think it's for a lot of people that Bob notes is a lot of brands is that you don't grow by having how many increasing loyal customers or how many loyal customers you have, but how many total customers you have. Because in the end, which is the title, Sex and Commerce, consumers are promiscuous. They will find deals, they'll go different places. So brands do not grow through pure loyalty. A ton of loyalty programs have actually failed. And I think that's one of the very interesting insights is that actually a lot of loyalty isn't there. Buyers are quite promiscuous. They'll go wherever there's a deal or wherever there's a better option or something that'll help my unique self. In that, just the realization that if you want to grow your brand, it's probably through broad customer acquisition than through the fantasy of deep emotional loyalty. That was one that really hit some of my preconceived notions. So I've really been meditating and contemplating on that one. So if you want to also deepen your understanding of how brands grow and all of that, sure, get Dr. Byron Sharp's book on how brands grow, but also this book has a handful of other essays along with Sex and Commerce that touch on that. And I think it's just fascinating to have a better understanding on how brands grow. Final insight 5 is actually going to be a few essays, but the overarching thing is that social media is overhyped. Clicks matter in that brand loyalty is not everything that it comes out to be. So the first comes from an essay called The Collapse of Social Media. While social media was pitched as revolutionary, relational, and transformative, in reality, it often became another channel that absorbed time, money, and attention without producing proportional business results. There's a Forrester research report that Bob notes that's from like 2012 that just notes that like social media is one of the weakest channels to actually drive business growth. So then you can say, well, it's all about long term. Well, it's 2026, 14 years after that was reported. And I think we'd all almost agree even more so that social media, there's so much noise, all of these factors, but it doesn't actually drive sales that much. Brand loyalty in social media was an interesting essay because he talks about how Burger King had this unique campaign it ran where it was creating a special Facebook page that only people that made the decision to join that versus get a free Big Mac. So I don't know why they were doing a Big Mac, which I think that's McDonald's. I don't eat out much. But anyways, regardless, they asked like 8,000 people, whatever the total number was, and like a very small set of people actually followed the page over the coupon for the free Big Mac. So all of a sudden they had like, I think it was like 10,000 or 11, whatever, but like 8,000 people versus like 3 or 2,000 chose the Big Mac. Well, in the end, Burger King was expecting loyalty to matter in that people would pick the brand loyalty over a free product. They didn't actually have that many coupons. I think they had like 1,000 or something. I'm butchering this, so if you read that essay, do not come back yelling at me that I was wrong. But just the huge truth is that Burger King, they displayed that people are so much more pragmatic than they are loyal. Well, though, as Bob notes, like these people are actually, though, that did that are probably paraded as like, what a great marketing move. Like you got a few people to follow it versus pushing tons of others to a competitor, which in all other realms of marketing would just be terrible marketing. But they're probably at some social media conference talking about how great social media is, excluding the fact that it was actually a horrible experiment. And then the final essay is Why Clicks Matter. And really that whole thing is that we've gone to this place that like engagement, like how many people are engaging with your brand, all these things that can matter. But at the end of the day, a display ad and some of these things that while are quite ineffective, their only job is to get a click. And then if they call the number or all that stuff, after that, it's out of marketing or advertising's hands. And I think that makes a ton of sense because as you know, it's the only realistic expectation for a display ad is that it will generate a click. And moving away from clicks can bolster up this industry, especially for display ads where it's all about impressions. And then we forget that like nobody's actually clicking on it, which means that maybe that's dying out or our creative's bad. But hey, we got 150,000 impressions, which I was part of a few consulting engagements in my previous work where I just pushed hard back at that. Like none of that matters because nobody clicked and actually filled out a form. So how do we do ads marketing that actually leads to true clicks? The kind of key takeaway here is stop demanding miracles from channels and just judge them by what they can actually do. Social media isn't going to grow your brand. It has different ways it's used. Sadly, it's become more of a tax to pay as a company, but it can also be useful in different ways. So I don't want to say that it's dumb, it's dead, as everybody says, but it just deserves more accurate approach to it, judging it rather by theory than by the reality of what it can do using metrics and true revenue potential and influence, which I haven't seen social media do a ton outside D2C and e-commerce brands. Now, finally, 3 questions to contemplate as we round out this episode. Question number 1, how can I strengthen my fundamentals so I stop clinging to ideology or trying to hack the algorithm? Because as Bob notes, there is no algo for good marketing and advertising because the best marketer is able to think clearly and not just copy trends. They approach every new challenge with a beginner's mind, and I think that's something that I teach a ton on this podcast. My marketing meetups, I'm trying to instill that too, of like it's all about not relying too heavily on a framework or a process or an ideology, and really just having the muscles to think in every unique situation in that market, in that industry, with those types of buyers. Question number 2 is, where am I over relying on ideology instead of aligning with reality? So to take it even a step further, to make it really practical, what is that ideology for you? Is it social media? Is it email? Is it video? Video is going to take over the world. Where is ideology running your decisions, your positioning, your thinking versus true reality, actually being open to change your ideologies to reality rather than fitting reality within your ideologies? Question is whether you're following what works for your organization or what sounds smart in theory. What reality is telling me may be different from the theory I bought into, but that is something I need to act on if I want effective strategy, because as Seth said, even though we used him as a counterexample, the best strategy is the one closest aligned to reality. So where am I choosing ideology over reality? Finally, question number 3, where do I need to think differently even if it makes me feel uncomfortable and potentially gives me looks from others and hopefully not, but also leads me out the door? Because better marketing often requires being willing to challenge consensus, risk disagreement, and test an idea that others might reject too quickly. Where am I failing to be different because of fear? I totally understand and respect that fear and being different and saying the one different thing where 9 people are agreeing and you're the 1 out of 10 that's like, I just don't think that's true. And coming with tact and actual data and stuff to prove that. Because the path to better marketing often starts with better questions, not better hacks. So rather than constantly trying to find those hacks, which is usually similar thinking, where am I able to be different, think differently, usually rooted in some questions that then can lead the entire organization or the marketing of that organization to be better. The reality is Marketers Are From Mars, Consumers Are From New Jersey is not a gentle book. I would not give this to someone that just is graduating college because it will just rip and destroy everything they just learned. It's sharp, skeptical, and often confrontational, but that's what makes it useful. We don't have enough of that in today's dialogue, I think. Hoffman is relentless about separating marketing reality from marketing mythology. He forces us to question popular assumptions, rethink lazy beliefs, and confront how much of the industry runs on illusion. I love that. And if you let that challenge sink in, it can make you a much better, stronger marketer. I believe this book will help you break free from conventional wisdom that doesn't actually hold up to reality, because the closer your marketing gets to that reality, the better your outcomes usually become. Thank you for listening to the 4th book review installment. If you have a book that you want me to review, if you have any thoughts, feedback from this, please send me an email. Whether it's in the show notes or not, it's Jordano, Jordano @hey.com. You can send me an email with a book you want me to review, some thoughts, some pushback even. I'm open for it. I really appreciate you coming on this journey. I know the interviews are fun. You get to hear different thoughts, but every now and then I enjoy to do these because they help me go from theory to practice by sharing this and teaching this to then hopefully one day marketing mastery, because that's why I'm here, and I hope it's why you're here as well. Onward. What one idea or topic of conversation stood out to you today? Write it down, share it with a friend, post it on social. The main thing is take action. That's how we go from theory to mastery. We need to practice. We need to put it into practice. Thank you for listening and being here, and I hope you tune in next week.